Yo, what is good, y'all? Welcome back. It is Prince Yaps. As you know, I was formerly Prince P, but we are here with another video. We will be reading some scary stories on Reddit, y'all. So if you do enjoy this video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe as well, as it helps the channel a ton. This is the type of video you want to listen to if you're trying to sleep, study, or you just need something in the background. Without further ado, let's begin, y'all. Just so y'all are aware, I'm still working on the layout. This is not 100%. I do like my little circle though, I can't lie, but this is not 100%. But with our first story, we will begin with, my stalker made one mistake. He assumed I was helpless. I'm a 20-year-old college student. I've always prided myself on being independent and handling my own business. I've been balancing morning class with a late night shift at a local cafe. My shifts usually end way past midnight, leaving me to walk back completely exhausted to my small rented apartment. It started out as something sweet. One morning, I walked into my lecture hall and found a single rose carefully placed on my desk. A few days later, it happened at the cafe. Right there on my table was my favorite Masha and the Bear mug. It was the exact one I had broken on campus a week prior, sitting next to a specific juice box I always buy. I honestly thought it was just a shy campus crush or even a regular from the cafe trying to get my attention. It made me smile, and I felt flattered and completely safe. But those innocent gestures quickly turned dark. I started getting DMs from a burner account on social media. They weren't sweet anymore. They were deeply personal and terrifying. "Your new bag looks good on you today," one message read. "You look so exhausted tonight at your cafe shift," said another. I never saw anyone trailing me on my dark walks home, and there was no obvious stalker on the streets. I tried to convince myself it was just some creep online who happened to share my daily routine. Tonight, I got home from a brutal shift at the cafe around 1 a.m. I deadbolted the door, locked the windows, and tried to find comfort in my own space. I sat on my bed under the dim light of my desk lamp, trying to cram for an upcoming exam. I was desperate to shake off the creepy messages. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed violently. It was a text from the same unknown number. "You're studying so hard after a long shift, but your room's light is way too dim. Don't want to hurt your beautiful eyes, do you?" I froze in place. My blinds were tightly shut. They had been since I walked in. How could he possibly know? Suddenly, another creepy text message popped up right under it. "I'm not looking from the dark street. The white curtains always look better from the inside." I stood up in absolute terror, my heart slamming against my ribs, completely panicked by the realization. Desperate to stay calm and regain control, I sat back down on my bed. The room had gone dead silent, and the ambient city noise completely vanished. Breaking the heavy quiet, I heard a faint, distinct sniffling sound inside the room. It was a soft inhalation of breath, a chilling human sound echoing in the stillness. Terrified and desperate to find the source of the noise, my eyes frantically scanned the dark corners of the room. My gaze finally locked into my heavy wooden wardrobe, noticing that the door was cracked open just a few centimeters. As I focused my eyes on the narrow dark gap, my blood turned ice when I realized a wide human eye was staring directly back at me from the opening. Suddenly, my screen lit up with another text message. The screen. "The smell of your clothes here is so beautiful, making this wait entirely worth it. Especially since I'm holding your favorite Masha mug right here inside." I knew exactly what his sick mind was planning next. He was going to step out and live out his twisted fantasy kidnapping, choking, or worse. But he made one fatal mistake. He thought I was easy prey. My Glock 9mm was under my pillow and had been waiting for him to step out with absolute patience. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how you promote getting the strap when you live alone, especially if you're a woman and somebody try you. Hey, boo! You know what I mean? Hey, for real, for real. That was a crazy, insane story. Yeah, that's insane. The fact that you you were getting stalked, you were fully aware of it, and like you were kind of just going with the flow at first because you're like, okay, well, it's pretty innocent. He's only giving me gifts. It's not too crazy. But then just seeing how far it runs, like, how do you even get inside? Like, that don't even make any sense. Has he been living there the whole time? Like, what if that was that? Like, he's like been so infatuated with her, he legitimately was just he followed her inside her house one time. Maybe she like had a window creaker open. Like he went inside and boom, that's when it like really like began like the actions, the flirtationness. That is scary. Holy crap. But anyway, y'all, next story. The hands that healed my body destroyed my life. I was driving home from Detroit after a long shift, thinking about my wife and little daughter waiting for me. The rain was pouring down hard on the Michigan highways, and visibility was near zero. Suddenly, a massive truck appeared in front of me, crossing the yellow lines. I screamed, tried to hit the brakes, and then a violent collision. The car flipped 3 times before landing in a ditch. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later, my body shattered. The doctor told me, "You're lucky to be alive, but the chronic pain will be with you for a very, very long time." I moved to the remote town of Lakeview in northern Michigan seeking treatment. There, I met Dr. Richard Harrison, a man in his late 50s with a neatly groomed white hair, calm blue eyes, and a paternal smile that made you feel like everything was gonna be okay. If I had known that the same hands that would fix my body were the same hands that would destroy my life, I would have preferred to die in that crash. After the accident, I suffered from excruciating pain in my spine. I arrived in the Lakeview in early winter, the snow covering the streets and the wooden houses looking quiet and safe. Dr. Harrison was well known in the area as a chronic pain specialist. His clinic was an elegant, old building on the edge of the lake, its walls filled with degrees from prestigious universities and photos of smiling former patients. During my first visit, he sat with me for over an hour, listened to the story of the accident in detail, examined my spine gently, and spoke in a calm, reassuring voice. "I will give you your life back, my friend." He started me on a new treatment called Vitalorex, via weekly injections, along with supplementary oral medication. He said it was experimental, but highly effective, and locally approved. For the first 3 weeks, I felt real improvement. The pain subsided. I was able to sleep for more than 4 hours straight, and I even returned to part-time work at a local auto shop. But gradually, I noticed I was forgetting simple things. Where my car keys were, the name of my coworkers, even what I had for lunch. I blamed it on the medication exhaustion. I'd wake up in the morning to find new bruises on my thighs or arms that I didn't remember getting. I started finding voice memos on my phone in my own voice, talking about things I don't remember, appointments, complaints, even confessions of severe pain. I called the doctor and he reassured me, saying these things were normal side effects, that my brain was just adapting to the medicine. The neighbors in Lakeview praised him constantly, calling him the town miracle, saying he had helped so many people who suffered accidents, and some of them had completely changed their lives and then left town suddenly. His wife, Margaret, a nurse at the clinic, would call me in the evenings to ask how I was doing in a warm, comforting voice. One night, I woke up inside my car parked in front of a strange house, the snow covering the windows, and my watch showing 4 in the morning. I had no memory of how I got here. I went back to the clinic, panicked and terrified. He gave me an extra dose and said my memory would improve. I felt relieved for a moment, but doubt began to slowly creep in. The doctor just smiled and calmly said, "Trust me, we have this situation under control." By the end of the second month, the anxiety turned into true, escalating horror. I started losing entire hours of my day. I'd leave the workshop at 2 in the afternoon, and then suddenly wake up at 8 in the evening, sitting in a restaurant I didn't know, and the waiter would tell me I'd been sitting there for 2 hours. I found strange things in my pockets, car keys that weren't mine, and a note written in my own handwriting that said, "Don't trust the doctor." I checked the shop's security cameras and saw myself leaving early, wearing a strange, eerie smile. I went to the police, but they just called Dr. Harrison, who assured them I was suffering from PTSD and that my condition was under control. During one of my visits, I noticed Margaret looking at me with a strange expression, as if she knew a secret. I started questioning everything at night. I'd hear a faint whispering inside my head, voices talking about things I hadn't done. One night, I woke up standing in front of my bathroom mirror, my hands stained. My hands stained with dried blood and a knife on the floor. There were no wounds on my body. I called the doctor, panicked and furious, shouting at him, "This damn medicine you're injecting in me has ruined my life. I feel like I'm another person, someone I don't recognize. Dr. Harrison, right now, I wish I were living with the pain from the accident instead of this ruined life." He came to my house in the middle of the night and sat beside me, saying, "You're safe with me. We'll change the treatment plan. Don't worry." I saw him smile a different kind of smile. My doubts turned into a certainty. This doctor is a fraud. He's deceiving the townspeople. Or perhaps they were all in it together. The next day, I called the doctor's wife to book a checkup at the clinic. It was scheduled for 8 in the evening. I went to the clinic and found it empty. No patients. The nurse asked me to wait a moment. While I was waiting, I heard the nurse whispering into her phone, mentioning the name of a patient who had died years ago. I remembered reading the news about that patient. He had committed S-word after losing all his money, killed his wife, and suffered from severe psychological disorders. In that moment, divine intervention stepped in to save me and to save others from this human monster. Stripped of all humanity, suddenly I found the doctor leaving the exam room, leaving the door open. I took advantage of his absence and the nurse's preoccupation with the phone call. I snuck into his office and opened his drawers. I found files of former patients. All of them had suffered memory loss, bruises, and strange behavior, then either committed S-word or disappeared. He was using a mix of experimental drugs to partially control their minds, making them sign documents, transfer money, and cover up his own crimes involving the trafficking of illegal pharmaceuticals. I was the perfect victim, a man alone after an accident with no close family. I left the exam room quietly and asked the nurse to schedule another appointment. The following night, as I was trying to flee the town, the doctor knocked on my door quietly. He was wearing his usual paternal smile. He said, "I came in to give you the final dose that will cure you completely." I tried to close the door, but he was faster. He pushed me hard and injected something into my neck that made my body freeze instantly. While my mind remained fully aware, he confessed everything to me in cold, calm voice. He had been using his patients as puppets for years, stealing from them, making them commit small crimes under the influence of the drugs, then getting rid of them when they started to remember. His wife was his partner in everything. I woke up hours later in the clinic's basement. chained to a cold metal bed, listening to the sound of dripping water. I tried to scream, but he returned and injected me with another slow acting dose. Before I lost consciousness, he whispered, "You're gonna sleep now. And when you wake up, you won't remember a thing." I was saved by chance. An anonymous tip reached the FBI. I still don't know who made the call. They found me at the very last second. Dr. Harrison had fled with his wife hours before they arrived, leaving behind a file portraying me as mentally unstable. Now, I live in a distant village. I don't want anyone to know where I am. I'm partially paralyzed, and I'm taking antitoxins and anti-hallucination medicine and anti-hallucination medication that doesn't fully work. Every night, I wake up in a panic, feeling my arms for signs of new injections. I don't know if the drug he gave me is still slowly working inside my blood. I don't trust any doctor, and I can hardly sleep. My life has turned into a permanent hell. The horror wasn't the accident, nor the pain. It was the hand. It was trusting the hand that promised to heal. And I know that somewhere, he's smiling and planning for another patient. Or perhaps he's coming back to finish what he started. Wow. I'm in disbelief. That one actually got to me. Like my face was, damn, that ending kind of killed me. First of all, why did you open the door, bro? At the end, you just had to look in your peephole and just go, no, But then again, he probably would have forced you to open the door anyway, because he would have. You were still on the drug, bro. Oh my God, this is tough. That's a good ass story. That's a really good story. I can't even lie. That is a phenomenal story right there. That had me at the edge of my seat, bro. Like, oof. They know how to reel you in. And I think it was like the build up towards it more so than anything else. Because we saw that he did once have a family, but now he's all alone. And, you know, going through that accident, you just want that chronic pain to stop. And someone who has a mild, like scoliosis, it's not really anything serious, but at times I will have some chronic pain in my back or during my elbow. You know, it's like going to like the shoulder blade all the way down here. It hurts. Even right now, it hurts. But it's something I'm used to, though. But going through something like extraordinarily worse, that sounds like hell. And then just trying to get that pain away and having this doctor who you're trusting slowly take advantage of you is actually kind of poetic, because a lot of the Black community, we actually don't trust a lot of doctors, especially like Black women, because they get treated really weird during it. But like just seeing that, like, and it's because I trusted that damn doctor. And one bad doctor can make you not want to trust any doctor, but doctors are very necessary. So it's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. But let's get on to the next story, y'all. For the next story, we'll be reading, I was forced to go whale watching. What appeared wasn't a whale. This happened a few months ago after my mom met her boyfriend, Greg. She was always going over to his house to watch movies or eat dinner whenever I stayed at my dad's for the weekend or made plans with friends. He was a nice enough guy, but would tell jokes only he found funny and sometimes were really offensive. One day, my mom told me he was going to take us whale watching sometime in June. I told her I didn't want to go. I have this thalassophobia, which, to those who don't know what that is the fear of bodies of water and the unknown things that live in the dark depths. She knew I had it, but her love for Greg overpowered the love for her son and took me anyways, no matter how much I protested. I was miserable. The whole car ride, I was quiet. Anytime Greg tried to interact with me, I either gave him short responses or none at all, which rewarded me looks from my mom, the kind of look that said, "We are going to talk when we are home." After a 2-hour car ride and 3 expensive tickets later, we are on the boat. The boat was kind of big, but immediately felt small as the rest of the whale watching group boarded, including me, my mom, and Greg. There were 8 people in the group. We were set to sail right after the captain and his assistant, who I refer to as Captain Dave and Jonesy, were finished with their preparations. I felt panic begin to rise in my chest as the view of the dock started to shrink as we got further away and into the open ocean. I held myself as the boat rocked with every crash of wave. The sound of my heartbeat quickening, drowned out of the sound of the whale watchers chatting. My breaths were shallow and picking up speed, but no one seemed to notice at first. That was until I felt someone grab my arm and pull me to the side. "Stop it," my mom scolded me. "You look like a effing school shooter." I just looked at her. "I didn't even want to come on this trip. You made me," I argued back as I yanked my arm back from her grasp. Ugh, that's a crazy thing to say to your child. "You look like a school shooter." "I didn't think you were going to be this bad. Just have fun and stop embarrassing me." My mom stormed off. This wasn't the first time she acted like this because of a boyfriend, but it still hurt knowing that the person who gave me life could be so cold to her own offspring. 30 minutes have passed without seeing a whale or any kind of sea life whatsoever. The group began to get restless and agitated. Some wanted their money back. Captain Dave apologized and began to start the boat, but just as the boat began to move on, we heard the propeller make a large sound, resembling a deli slicer slicing chunks of raw meat. Then the boat stopped. Captain Dave Captain Dave kept trying to start it up, but it kept stalling. Confused, he looked over the boat to see if he could get a good look at what the propeller was caught on, but just as he looked, he froze. Some of the members of the group looked as well and gasped in horror. I soon followed to see what had everyone shocked, and I felt ill. There was a dark figure in the water that was the size of a jeep, slowly floating to the surface, surrounded by a red coloring in the water that began to disperse around the boat. What surface was the corpse of a sperm whale calf. I threw up at the sight while some women cried. My mom looked at Greg in horror as she clung to his embraced Elmom. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt any of the story, but golly, this mom is making me so mad. But let's continue on. "Damn it," Captain Dave said as he lowered his hat. "Jonesy, can you see how badly the propeller was damaged before the sharks came? I'm going to send an SOS to the Coast Guard." "Aye, aye, Captain," Jonesy nodded. He went below deck and came back a few minutes later in a diving suit. The group murmured as Jonesy drove into the water. He grazed himself against the calf's carcass like he was apologizing for what happened, but even through his mask, I could tell he looked puzzled. After he submerged himself underwater, Captain Dave came back and reassured that the Coast Guard was on its way. They wouldn't get here for about an hour. While the group groaned, I sat down and held my knees. An hour of waiting in the open ocean was going to be hell. Just then, Jonesy resubmerged and climbed back onto the boat. The captain walked forward towards him, and I could hear the conversation. "Hey, how bad is it?" "The propellers are shredded," Jonesy replied. Captain Dave looked confused. "How the hell did they shred it from a sperm whale calf?" the captain asked. That's just it," Jonesy replied. "I don't think it was the calf we hit. When I went to check the propeller, I brushed up against the corpse. It fell off. When I was submerged, I took a better look. It's missing its lower half, and what's left is hollow out inside." Captain Dave's eyes widened as he looked at the corpse. "Hollowed out? How could that be?" Jonesy shrugged and scratched the back of his head. "Your guess is as good as mine. I just know that the parent sounds upset. I could hear their cry coming from somewhere. Never heard such a sad sound before. I didn't even know whales could make such distorted sound." It was an upsetting conversation to listen to. A few minutes later, someone noticed the corpse begin to sink, and at the same time, the propeller once again made a loud break sound. The captain and Jonesy looked at each other. "I thought you said it was broken." It was. But I don't know how it's moving again," Jonesy replied as he headed down the ladder. "I'm going to check again." Jonesy submerged once more. The propeller continued to make the same loud sound over and over, like it was on repeat. Then suddenly, it stopped. Suddenly, Josie resubmerged in panic. Help! Help me! There's something! He was cut off before he could finish the sentence by something yanking him underwater. There was this big guy in the group that jumped to the water to save him, but they were both underwater for far too long. We all assumed sharks had come to eat the carcass and took them in the process. Captain Dave threw his hat off as he cursed and pinched his brow. There was nothing any of us could do. If we went into the water to save them, then it would just be more food for the sharks. The only thing we could do was wait for the Coast Guard. 20 minutes had passed since then. I tried to take a nap since I didn't want to stare into the deep blue sea or interact with anyone, but there was no way I could relax. All of a sudden, I heard a small tapping sound on the side of the boat. No, it wasn't a tap. More like something was trying to tap, but it didn't know how much force it put into it. I braced myself before peeking my head over the boat's stern to see what made the sound. It was the man that dove in to save Jonesy. He was just raising his arms up for me to grab him. I gasped and called for help as I tried to reach him, but I noticed something else in the water. Its body looked like a large mass that seemed to camouflage in the water. It hid underneath the man, looking up at me. I screamed as I could see its face shift from the ocean surface. Its eyes were so sunken into its skull it looked like it was staring at two black holes. It had an overbite with a row of sharp, jagged teeth, and the head looked to be spear-shaped with a long, serpentine neck. There was something else I noticed, but it was about the man. He was missing his lower half. It was like his torso was a party hat being worn by this creature. I was about to scream, but was interrupted by a low, distorted voice. Help me. Help me. Was all I heard, but the man's mouth didn't move. It sounded like a radio station, losing its frequency, then slowly getting it back as you turned the knob, almost like it was trying to find the right pitch and articulation. Not only that, but it wasn't that man's voice. That voice belonged to Jonesy. Holy shit. I screamed louder than I had before as I fell and scuttled back until I knocked into my mom and Greg. He picked me up by the shoulder as I squirmed hysterically. There's something in that water. I cried as I dropped to my knees and began to hyperventilate. Captain Dave went to inspect the overboard. Oh my God, the captain shouted. Quick, get a life preserve. This man is alive. I looked over confused. Did he not see the creature? I thought. Just then, I heard the same empty voice. Help me. The mimicry sounded better practice, but at the same time like a recording. I didn't think the captain noticed that the voice was Jonesy, or the words came from a motionless mouth. He was more focused on trying to save a life that he didn't know was already gone. You're all right, son. Just grab hold. Captain Dave reassured the torso, but it only kept repeating the same thing over and over again. Help me. By now, I think the captain realized something was off. The tapping sound grew louder and louder with each empty plea for help, eventually turning into a bang. Whoa, what the hell are you doing? Captain Dave shouted. Some members of the group tried to help the man along with the captain, but slowly walked back in utter horror. Why is he banging himself against the boat? Someone asked. Apparently the creature began to use so much force for the tap that it was slamming the man's upper half against the boat, ripping and spraying what little blood the man had left. Help me. Help me. The creature continued to mimic. It was trying to lure us into the water, like how an anglerfish uses its I don't know that word, but I will. Bioluminescence. Luminescence. It was trying to lure us into the water, like how an anglerfish uses its bioluminescence, lure trick prey in the darkest parts of the ocean into getting close enough that it snatches them in its jaws. We all rushed to the other end of the boat in panic. The slamming continued for another minute before stopping. Greg was the first to walk towards the stern of the boat, but as he cautiously made his approach, I felt a splash of water coming from behind and was hit by a large object before falling to the ocean along with two of the whale watchers. Before I knew it, I was looking up at the sky as I sank beneath the waves. The cloud rippled and shrank as my mind began to race. I held my breath from fear rather than holding from I held my breath from fear rather than holding it underwater. Everywhere I turned, I just saw blue. Then the creature's fingers suddenly appeared from within the veil of blue, like it just materialized from nothing. At first, it looked just like a blurry speck in the distance, but soon it swam towards me like a torpedo. Jonesy's upper half was still attached to its head, but with the force of the creature was swimming, the corpse worked against its jet float and came off. As Jonesy's corpse began to float down the abyss, I could see that he was hollow on the inside. The creature propelled its flippers with great speed, its jaws opening as it gets close to me. I thought I was done for. It passed by me instead and snatched one of the whale watches that had been flung overboard along with me and missed the other. Have you ever heard someone scream bloody murder underwater? It's like someone's voice is being held back by an unknown presence. No sound could be made that wasn't muffled and bubbly. The other whale watcher did not hesitate to swim towards the surface, and I quickly followed, all while the screw and I quickly followed all while the scream grew more distant as the creature dove deeper with its meal trapped in its jaws. I gasped for air and tried my best to tread water. All I could do was hold on to the whale watcher. He kept shouting at me to get off. It was pushing me away. I started to cry in a way I haven't since I was a baby. Please, please save me. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. The whale watcher just swam towards the boat by himself as I continued to panic. In a second, the man was suddenly dragged back underwater by the creature. I cried out more, knowing I would be next. Everyone on the boat was reaching their hands towards me and telling me to swim as fast as I can. My mother was surprisingly the loudest out of all of them. With tears and snot dripping down my wet face, I began to swim towards the boat. In the distance, I could hear a helicopter. For a second, I felt relieved they were going to be saved, but as I went to grab the hand that would lift me back abroad, I shouted in pain as the creature locked its jaw on my foot and yanked me back underwater. Bubbles escaped from my mouth as I shouted in pain. I tried with all my might to swing down at the creature, but the water's resistance only slowed the speed of my punch. The creature vigorously shook its head as it clamped down hard onto my foot. I felt its teeth scrape against my bones as blood poured out and dyed the surrounding area red. That was it. This is how I was going to die. Sure, I could keep trying to fight off the thing, but that would take too much energy. I was already losing. I looked at the surface to see a red helicopter land in the water next to the boat. As I watched the surviving people board the helicopter, I didn't think, I'm glad they were able to get home safely, or at least no one else has to get hurt. I thought of how fair it was. How unfair that I was dragged to go whale watching when I didn't even want to. Unfair that this sea monster found us by random chance and killed innocent people. And how unfair it was that I was never going to see my friends and dad again as my remains live in the stomach of this creature. My eyes began to shut as I was close to losing consciousness. I could hear a large punch-like sound coming from above me. My vision became too blurry to see, but I could make out two figures. The next thing I knew, I was coughing up water. The medic on board had given me CPR and wrapped a tourniquet around my thigh. I looked around in panic and saw I was on a helicopter with my mom and the remaining whale watchers. My mother held me close and cried, telling me that she thought I had died. I was still in daze, but she told me that Captain Dave and Greg had drove into the water to save me. Captain Dave had distracted the creature while Greg had brought me to the surface. Unfortunately, it must have made quick work out of the captain because as soon as Greg climbed out the helicopter, the creature shot its head out the water, grabbed Greg by his torso, then yanked him back into the water. The pilots didn't know what the creature was either. They started up in the helicopter and lifted us up into the air before the creature could cause damage to it and leave us stranded again. My mother cried for the loss of her lover. Two of the whale watchers cried for their friend that was taken from them. I was slowly losing consciousness again. Before I did, I peered down towards the ocean. The creature poked its head from the water. Its mouth hung open like a morley eel and began to grunt until it made a helicopter sound. I woke up in a hospital room 2 days later. My leg had to be amputated due to the massive tissue damage. I looked over to see my father sitting next to me. His eyes opened so wide that I thought they were going to pop out of socket. He hugged me as he became a crying mess. He told me that he had gotten a call about what happened, except a few details were left out, namely the sea monster. He was told that we all hit a coral reef, and after I fell overboard, I was attacked by a shark along with some of the group. My dad knows my fear of the ocean. I later found out when he learned that my mother forced me to go. He had raised his hands against her for the first time in all of these years of knowing her. I cut ties with my mother after I was discharged from the hospital. Actually, I didn't even let her see why I was recovering. I live with my dad now. If she cares enough about me. The last thing I heard about my mother is that she was emotionally distant. That could happen if you lost your lover to some sea creature and your son never wanted to see you again, all within a few days of each other. I'm doing better at using my prosthetic foot, but I sometimes trip and fall. My friends call me Whirlpool the way I spin on the ground whenever whenever it happens, but I don't mind. You're probably wondering what that creature was also. Your guess is as good as mine. My phobia has gotten worse since then. Even taking a shower or bath makes me cry if I'm in it for more than a few minutes. Only 5% of the ocean has ever been discovered. There could be thousands, if not millions, of unknown sea life yet to be discovered. But this creature still felt unnatural to our oceans. It was the very definition of a sea monster. It was the very definition of a sea monster. But that's why I'm writing the story. I want to know what this thing is, and not just that. I want to warn people who love the ocean, who love to go sailing. You may not believe my story, but this was an experience I never want to live again. All right, y'all. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Again, these type of videos will not only just be on YouTube, but I'm also going to put them on audio platforms like podcasts as well. So if you do enjoy that, make sure you hit the like button as well and keep supporting that as well. But anyway, y'all, subscribe. I love y'all. Bye, Rosie Squad.